Let's face it, cyclists as a whole don't really have it that easy. Between the perception that they're either drug-fueled athletes or arrogant entitled road hogs hindering fine upstanding tax-paying motorists, we have more than our fair share of challenges. Add to that being overweight as well, and things start to get slightly complicated. As a self-confessed fat cyclist myself, I can tell you that being heavy adds all kinds of extra challenges when getting on a bike. Now, for the benefit of all of those hard-working rocket scientists who've taken time out from their busy schedules to leave poorly spelt comments stating the glaringly obvious, I'll say right now that yes, many of these challenges do indeed go away when you lose some weight. I'm not stupid. May I also suggest that if you're going to troll somebody about being overweight in written form, at least have the decency to learn the difference between weight, W-A-I-T, and weight, W-E-I-G-H-T. You'll look marginally less stupid in the long run. So, probably the single main challenge faced by fat cyclists is that being heavy makes cycling hard work, especially when the road starts to go uphill. This is obviously down to the power to weight ratio, which is basically the average power output of a rider, say 200 watts, divided by the combined weight of that cyclist and their bike. Again, let's say 100 kilos to give a watts per kilo figure. In this particular example, it would be 2 watts per kilo. In practical terms, it means that as weight increases, you will need an equal increase in power to move that mass at a similar speed. Now, I'll be the first person to admit that I'm one of the slowest climbers that I know, but then that kind of makes sense as I'm also one of the heaviest cyclists that I know. That said, I can climb. It's a pretty cold day in hell when I have to get off and walk up a hill, and what's more, I know that I'm not alone. It stands to reason that many heavyweight cyclists must have a pretty high power output, otherwise they would never make it up the climbs at all. But because they are carrying a few extra kilos, much of that power is effectively lost. The upside though is that if you can lose some weight, even a modest amount, your power to weight ratio will change in your favour, and it will result in a fairly dramatic increase in not only your climbing speed but on the flats as well. On the downside though, the very thing that makes climbing hard, gravity, works very much in our favour on the way down, so descending will be just that little bit slower. If you are a heavier rider, I don't need to tell you how fast we can do that. Now, while cycling is widely recognised as a low impact activity, I would suggest that heavier riders should pay attention to their knees. Obviously, because climbing is that much harder for us, we tend to put a lot more pressure through our knees. This can be improved to some degree with a good bike fit and ensuring that the saddle height and position are correct. Riding in lower gears will also prevent too much pressure being put through your knees, but more often than not, particularly on steep climbs, you will be in your lowest gear anyway and have no choice but to grind away. Unfortunately, in this instance, if you have any concerns about your knees, you'll have no choice but to get off and walk. Another challenge is the bike itself. Many frames, components and wheels have manufacturers' recommended weight limits. These vary depending on manufacturer and item, but never be tempted to exceed that limit. If you do, that item could fail. At best, you'll void any warranty, while at worst you could be involved in a nasty accident. Generally speaking, mountain and fat bikes are better suited to heavier riders, but if you want to stick with a road bike, it's probably best to get professional advice. I personally have never had any issues with carbon frames. All my problems seem to be with wheels. From time to time I go through phases of breaking spokes on the rear wheel, but over time I found wheel sets that work. Broadly speaking, the higher the spoke count, the stronger the wheel. It also helps if that wheel has been handmade. Now you could argue that overweight cyclists shouldn't wear cycling kit at all, and that's all fine and dandy. After all, it's not the most flattering of clothing. If you don't want to wear it, you don't have to, but for those of us that do, finding kit that fits can be a bit of a challenge. Again, I go through phases of either having quite a lot of choice of kit to having none at all. From what I can see, it depends very much on where that clothing is made. For example, an extra large jersey made in Italy would only be something like a medium if the jersey was made here in the UK. Because of this wild difference in sizings, it's very important to look at a sizing chart when buying kit online, even when buying from the same manufacturer. One company that I've had great success with is Chapeau. I have 3 items of their clothing and an XL sizing from their old cafe line fits me very well. Be careful though, I once bought an XL jersey from one of their other product lines and it didn't fit me at all. Didn't even come close. Nowadays, there are even a few companies that specialise in cycling kit for larger riders. One such company is UK-based Fat Lad at the Back. They do a wide range of top quality jerseys and shorts up to 7XL, although I personally don't quite understand why they had to have the company name in big letters on the back of many of their designs. This lack of choice of jerseys for us larger cyclists in suitable designs has prompted me to find my own custom solution. One of the upsides of being a larger cyclist though is that when bike shops are having a clearance sale in their clothing department, it's quite easy to find a bargain. Unfortunately, another downside to being a fat cyclist is all of the unsolicited dietary advice. Again, many people see an overweight person and for one reason or another think that they have no idea why they're fat. Believe me, we know all too well how we got here. For the most part, this advice is well meant, but it's very often contradictory. If I personally had to design a diet based on the advice I receive, it would be 0 carb, fat-free and vegan, while at the same time also being carb-based, high-fat keto and carnivore. At the end of the day, all we can do is plough our own furrow and do what we think is going to work best for us. Sadly, because a few non-cycling muggles have the very narrow perception that cyclists are all stick thin and only ride the Tour de France, when they see someone that doesn't fit their stereotype, they somehow conclude that they aren't in fact a cyclist, even when they're wearing full cycling kit and sat on a road bike. In most cases, this is no great shakes. They'll simply move on with their lives and quickly go back to worrying about work, the family and what they'll be having for dinner. In a few rare cases though, seeing a man of a certain age and weight in lycra is all the permission they need to laugh and maybe even give some motivational encouragement. If this happens, never be tempted to respond, as it's the quickest way to escalate the situation. Simply move on with your life and smile to yourself knowing that the highlight of their lives is probably watching the latest episode of Love Island. Most non-cyclists though are respectable, decent people, and realise that we're out on our bikes because we enjoy it or because we want to do something positive for our health. Cycling in general has so many benefits that being fat or overweight shouldn't be a reason not to get on the bike. Nothing in life is without its own unique challenges and obstacles. You can either see these obstacles and let them end your journey right there, or you can be excited about the possibilities that lay beyond. Thanks for watching.